Andre Namino is back.
The same.
Back.
It's a yellow coffee mug. It's a.
Yes, and on the other side.
Oh my God! I didn't realize that there's a picture on it.
Yes, I'd like to see it.
All this time I've been using it.
Can
Oh,
we see it?
Michelle,
Yeah.
I'm going to be referring a guy to you. He wants a EUA.
Oh, great.
And I'm
Thank
going
you.
to tell him I have a colleague who's an expert on it and turn him over to you.
Oh, I can't think of a better endorsement. Thank you.
Well, that's fantastic. What's on the mug, Larry?
It is a picture of the current occupant of the White House.
Oh, now that's okay. I don't hate you
Melania?
politically.
But my profession is apolitical.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And I like you just as much as I did a minute and a half ago.
Which was not very much.
I don't respect your
All right.
political views, but you, I like. Andre Namino, how are you?
Good, thank you.
You were a regular for like 20 weeks in a row, and then
Well, I was blocked. I don't know what happened on one of them. I couldn't get on.
I know it's my fault. It's always my.
But then I got a little busy. And Michelle, we just submitted a second EUA.
Oh, good. What was it for?
One was for a device that lowers IL-1 beta cytokines in fluid. So the intent is to test it on the the cytokine storm. And the second one was a much simpler diagnostic device. It was a cardiac output monitor.
That's exciting.
We'll see what happens. They did respond right away, which I was very pleased to see, actually.
The first couple of responses go pretty quickly, but once you move into a more substantive interactive review, those are taking, like we had an application in for a week and a half, and then a week and a half later, they're like, this is our update to update you, that we're going to update you in a week.
Well, I did anticipate that the next steps would take longer, but at least it was nice to see to get the submission number and all that.
Yeah.
Have you had any get through yet?
Not any of the mask ones turn around pretty quickly.
I would assume, yeah.
But the other ones I'm working on are taking some time.
And have you done a mask one?
Yes. And that's like as little as 24 hours.
Yeah, I heard that also. Interesting.
But I've asked them like several questions and I don't get a response to my questions, but they do respond to the applications, which is kind of funny because you can't finish some of the applications without the answers to the questions. So.
We have a new friend on our screens this morning, or if you're him, this evening. Venkat, why don't you introduce yourself to our friends here?
Hello, is the voice clear?
Yes, I mean, insofar as we can understand you with your thick accent, it's very clear.
No.
Of course, yeah. So the thing is, yeah, sure. So good morning, all of you. It's about 8:30 p.m. here. I live in Vizag, India, and I am a biomedical engineer by training. I'm a master's in biomedical engineering. And for the past 3.5 years, I was working in a government-sponsored medical device park, which was encouraging manufacturers to invest in this region. And it also is developing testing facilities for medical devices. And just right now, maybe I think from this month, I'm starting out as an independent consultant in standards. And I work in medical device standards and also like all different allied areas related to manufacturing. And especially for COVID, I really appreciate Joe that for this initiative and MDG group. And I have been learning a lot from Michelle and then about packaging and a few from Jane, I guess, and also from Shannon regarding usability. These all videos are very good. I actually plan to attend this, what is your conference once, the 10X
10X
medical devices.
Conference.
Yes. But last year, or maybe hopefully I'll attend in future. yeah.
Hopefully I will host another one. That would be great. Once we're allowed to be in groups of 10 or more. I had a dream last night where not only could I fly naturally, but I was in this, it was like Christmas time, and I kind of flew into this building where my parents lived, and there was this fantastic like staircase kind of carousel that brought people around to the top floor. And it was, I mean, like people were that packed. I was like, first, this is very lucrative for my parents. And second, these people, don't they understand we're all getting coronavirus right now? I know they just released and we're allowed to go outside, but we're not supposed to be that packed. It has invaded our dreams, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, your dreams.
You haven't had a single COVID dream in 2 months?
Can't say that I have.
You're unimaginative. Before we hand the mic over to Venkat, this week's call is sponsored by Evado, and I say this just to let you all know that you can all have this kind of unpurchasable public relations stunt if you just send me candy. She sent me this candy from Australia, and this unusual candy was supposed to arrive for Easter. It's an egg, and it peels like an egg. I've never seen such a thing, but here the candy is inside the egg shell, which you have to peel.
Is it
You're not
edible
supposed-
shell?
No, the shell is not edible. It's like an egg. Well, now I've got shell all over my computer, but what I won't do for you folks. See, now it's on my floor.
Yep.
Huh?
It must have been, it was laid by a chocolate chicken. They're very
Barry,
rare.
we're already on, after that
Careful.
whole month thing, let's keep it professional. Anyhow, that egg was brought to you by Evado, eClinical Solutions at evado.com. And now back to our show. Venkat, do you want to show any screens, or are you just going to teach us verbally?
I just have a memory map in the slides, so can I have it? That will be
You
better
may.
for me, or
You may.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's me.
Okay.
That was mine. This is you. Make presenter.
So I just want to say hello from Camano Island, Washington.
Hello.
That
Yeah, I
sounds
guess we talked to everyone but Mark that time. My apologies, Mark.
Ah, I'm wounded. Anyway, hello everybody. I'm
The
wearing
reason I
my
didn't talk with you is because you're so familiar to me. It's like you're here in my own home.
yeah, right. You just don't notice anymore. I'm wearing my Mechanics Chess Club nerdy T-shirt. Mechanics is the oldest chess club in the United States. It's in San Francisco. So anyway, that's my.
You have a chess.com account?
I used to. I've got a chess clock. I used to subscribe to Chess World magazine. Anyway, we can talk about it.
No, I think it's on later today. My handle on chess.com is Big Client.
I used to date one of the top rated women chess players in the country, Dove Calvin, who was the editor of the magazine and ran the website.
So you made your move.
I made my move, if you know Dove. Yeah.
I see what you did there. All right, we're being completely disrespectful to our guest who's staying up late in India to tell us about Vizag, the city of destiny.
You can
Venkat,
see
it's all
my.
you, man.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry for this thing. I just had some 4 slides. I couldn't
Okay.
make a detailed presentation. So now I can't see myself. So. Okay. Okay. I'll just go on. So this is what was my plan was there are a lot of people who are from outside the medtech sector and who want to make some ventilators or help during COVID. So what I realized was very pretty soon, or I think in the media, you will find that a lot of automotive giants are getting into, or they're trying to make ventilators. In India, there are 3 or 4 major attempts happening. One of the largest automotive companies in India called Maruti Udyog is tying up with a small startup, and they are making a ventilator. Another ventilator manufacturer called Scanray, it is also tying up with a defense manufacturer and making a ventilator. And in a few days, Air Liquide India, which is the French manufacturer, which is based in India, they have some manufacturing here, is tying up with Hyundai India. And in the zone which I was working till last month, there are a couple of manufacturers who will be manufacturing ventilators. So first I realized was, how do you, like, it's a typical medical product takes a lot of time to design. So I thought I'll just list down the standards and discuss them one by one. And I will also try to highlight some points which relate to these emergency ventilators, where some requirements have been relaxed. And maybe I'll also learn regarding other topics. So I'll move on. So I just made a memory map. So can you all see the thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So before I go into that, maybe since you all are from Medtech, I'll just for this also I'll repeat. So the medical device, medical electrical equipment standards are basically, they are called IEC 60601 series or ISO 80601 series of standards. And in the 60601 series, there are 2 kinds of standards, or in this entire series. The first one is the general standard, which is applicable to all the equipments. And the second category are the particular standards, which are applicable to a very fixed equipment. Let us say a SpO2 sensor, which is ISO 80601-2-81, I guess, yeah, 61 or something. So like that. So similarly, I have seen that in news also, there are a lot of different ventilators. But if you design, or if you are capable of designing or manufacturing a critical care ventilator, then automatically you can manufacture all other types of ventilators, typically from a technology standpoint. Let's say like a transport ventilator, or a general non-invasive solutions like CPAP or BiPAP or so on, and or simpler respiratory care equipment like nebulizers or oxygen concentrators. So I have decided to focus on 80601-2-12, which is the particular standard for the critical care ventilator. So so this standard, a recent version has come up in 2020, ISO 80601-2-12 2020. I'm not much familiar with it. I'm a little bit familiar with the previous version of the standard, but this a new version has come immediately, but it has not yet been harmonized and in anywhere else, I guess, in such a short time. So the first standard which you have is for the general safety. So safety means it is basically 3 kinds of safeties are there. The first one is mechanical. So certain tests are relating to mechanical tests. The second one is electrical. The third one is thermal. So in the electrical test category, you have different kinds of tests, like testing for leakage current, means what is the current which is going on, leakage current, so that it doesn't harm us. And then there is other tests which involve this one test is a very critical test, which is this defib proof applied parts test, which means you are testing it with the defibrillator part, that relation. And these are all the critical electrical tests. Now in the mechanical tests, the key part is the enclosure design. So you are subjecting the device to different humidity, different thermal temperature, and ingress protection. So ingress means you are throwing. So there are 2 types of ingress. The first one is the dust ingress and the water ingress. And for most of these emergency ventilators, for emergency use, I have seen that IP standard of 21 is recommended. So there are different standards for dust and water ingress, and IP 21 is recommended. But whereas in the standards, usually you will find IP 22. So that is the actual recommended value. But for this emergency use authorization, they're recommending 21. So that's the mechanical part. Now comes the so here the critical part is in the enclosure design. Most of the devices will typically fail the humidity test. So when the device is subjected to this humidity chamber, it will typically fail that. So whoever the manufacturer is, they have to make sure that the guy who is designing their enclosures already has experience with these kind of standards. And especially if he comes from a military background or an aerospace background, then it is no problem. He can automatically jump into medical devices, because if your product is qualifying for the MIL standard, which is the US military standard and used worldwide, then you can directly get into the medical device sector as far as these electrical safety and mechanical and thermal safety is concerned. The second part, am I too fast? Is it clear?
It's clear.
I muted myself there, so I wanted to give everyone a chance.
Yeah, so
A lot of what
any
you're saying is
questions?
going over my head, but that's okay because I'm a marketing guy. But everyone else, cool. I'm looking at this and thinking, wow, that's complicated, and I'm glad I know you people.
Okay, I'll just simplify it.
No. You don't have to simplify it. All I need to know is if I have a question about some key standards for a critical care ventilator part, to ask Venkat. I'm good.
Okay, so the second test is this electromagnetic compatibility test. Now, like, you know, once I was interviewed for a job. This is just a funny part. Like, so anything related to electromagnetic compatibility, you know, the next time, even if you belong to this EMC sector or not, you can simply reply with one standard answer, which is from high school physics, that everything starts with Maxwell's equations. So anything in electromagnetism begins with Maxwell's equations. So then you're fine. So as long as you just say that answer, nobody can question it anyway. So the second test is this EMC test, which is electromagnetic compatibility test. So now what is so we all live in an electromagnetic environment, and our heart, our pacemaker, or our sinoatrial node is it is also affected by it. And this EMC is basically in two categories. The first one is radiated. The second one is conducted. Conducted means there is some sort of a wire or a cable involved. And the first one is radiated. So in radiated, there are again two types of tests. The first test is the radiated emission. The second test is the radiated immunity. So in radiated emission, there is only one point which a typical business manager has to take care. It is that the standard is called CISPR 11. So the full form of it's CISPR, CISPR 11, and it's a French acronym. So what it basically says is, if a device is, it defines two types of equipment. The first one is called a small medical equipment. The second one is called a large medical equipment. So the small ones are basically within about a diameter of maybe, let's say, about 2 meters. So or within a diameter of anything which can fit in a cylindrical volume having a diameter of 1.5 meter and height of 2 meters is basically a small device. So can you just give me a moment? I'll just.
Yeah, let's take an administrative break here while we don't lose you completely.
Okay, I'll just take a 2 minutes thing. I just have to put my charger in. Yeah.
I'm going to evict one of you and let Nikki come on because this is her first time joining us. Which one of you? Should we go with the Republican or the? I'm gonna let Larry go this time. No offense, Larry. And we're gonna let Nikki come on. Oh no, we don't want to do that. Oh, I can't do that. Let's see. Let's do that, and we can add Nikki. I'm not biased against all Republicans. I'm just joking there. Nikki, I just sent you a webcam request. If you can let yourself come on and you can introduce yourself. That's not Nikki.
I'm definitely not Nikki.
Well, this is a real letdown. Who the hell are you?
My name is Maciej Jakuki from Element Materials Technology. How's everyone doing?
Well, okay, but that's some serious false advertising right there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's under Nikki. Is this Nikki Malcolm potentially?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, she had forwarded me a link. I've been on.
Our unique link. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens. Anyhow, while you are not Mickey Malcolm, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Again, my name is Mache with Element Materials Technology. Element's a global testing laboratory for destructive and non-destructive testing. We do a lot of work in aerospace, automotive, transportation, same thing, I guess, energy, medical device, and so forth. So I manage our medical device sector and testing group. And
you heard about this ventilator presentation, and you were all over it.
I was all over it. We do quite a bit of ventilator testing in these times right now, and I figured I'd jump on here and hear what Venkat had to say.
All right, that's fair enough. I will say that we're going to be talking on Tuesday about intellectual property for open source projects like ventilators. And while this is decidedly not today's topic, I'll say somewhat provocatively, I think the ventilator wave is over, because we had this great fear, and that's one of the reasons I created the COVID group, that we need so many ventilators and we don't have enough. So we needed to equilibrate demand. We needed to bring all the resources of the medical device industry together. Let's make ventilators. And now it seems as though we've either A, done such a fantastic job flattening the curve that we don't need as many as we thought, and or B, it's really hard to start a ventilator project and get it cleared for use and out and helping people save lives, and or C, it's a pipe dream for someone to think that they're going to start a ventilator project today and get it cleared. And if anyone is going to be successful, it's going to be a company as big as GM, Ford, and Dyson, where even Dyson did not get to market. And then NHS said, yeah, no, we're good. Thanks anyhow. So as far as I'm aware, the only non-ventilator already making companies out there making ventilators are GM and Ford, and none of them have hit the market yet. Have I captured all of that properly? We'll talk about it on Tuesday, and I'm sorry to hijack your talk, Venkat, but am I in the right place or am I completely off here?
I will disagree slightly, but on a little tangent. I've been diving deep into that whole topic with a lot of critical care physicians who are really experts at this. And one of the issues with ventilators is, it turns out, let me put it this way, they were all asked, if you were really sick, would you ever want to be intubated and put on a ventilator? And not a single one of them said yes. Ventilators have, invasive ventilators can cause a lot of problems, and the survival rate isn't great. So there's an opportunity, I will kind of tease you with this, there's an opportunity for looking at different ways to increase oxygenation other than this approach, and that may be worth looking at. So anyway,
it sounds like the subject of a future talk. I'm very interested, and I think you said that people in the know said, I'd rather take my chances and careen toward death than use a ventilator. Is that what you just said?
That's right.
kind of.
Wow.
What they're trying to do is, if you can just, give someone nasal oxygen or any way just to increase their O2 levels without intubating, because if you intubate, you have to tranquilize, and that, anyway, a lot of problems with
wow. We will talk about that some more, but let's say we wanted to make a ventilator, we would ask Venkat how to do it. Venkat, now that you have powered up your computer, you want to back to your
maybe I'll just instead of the PPT, I'll just go like this. Hereby I can see your faces, so the reaction is there. So
okay, then I'm going to shut your screen so we can just see one another.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So there is another approach for a pandemic. So there is something called pandemic ventilators, which are there, which are simpler versions, and it's always good for governments or countries to stockpile them. And the simpler approach is which uses, last time also I had told, it uses this bag valve mask BVM or the AMBU bag. And if there is some way to automate it, then you have a sort of a temporary kind of, pandemic ventilator. And there are no standards for there are standards for this bag valve mask, BVM or ambu bag, but there are no standards for this kind of automated ones. And the second part is all these standards more or less are applicable for all respiratory care or many other electromedical devices. So if someone is experienced in that, it's good for them. So now I'll start again. So I was at EMC. So EMC is basically of two types, radiated and conducted. And here again, either it is radiated emissions or conducted emissions, or radiated immunity or conducted immunity. So typically, everyone knows about electrostatic discharge, ESD. So ESD, which falls under conducted immunity, is there are different types of conducted immunities like flicker and harmonics and so on and so forth. And this ESD is one test which most of the devices which fail. I have seen with many startups that any device is designed, the ESD test is one which fails. And the second test which fails is the radiated emissions. So this radiated emission test has to be done in something called a semi-anechoic chamber. And for ventilators, if their diameter is less than 1.5 meter, or I don't exactly remember the value, or if they are classified as small equipment, they have to be tested at 3 meters distance, which means it's a smaller chamber. Otherwise, the larger equipment have to be tested in a 10-meter SAC. So this 10 meters and 3. So it's a financial point. So usually,
because what you're saying is so over my head, would whatever slide you have be helpful? Should I give you the slide again?
I'll clarify this. It's a very simple thing. Okay. If the device is small, the costs of the tests will be low. If the device is larger, the cost, if you get your device tested in a 10-meter chamber, you will have to pay higher rates. This is typically true in India. I think it will be for like anywhere else. That's all I want to say. And the most important test, which is a simple test, which every company can do in-house, you don't need to go to any EMC lab, is the ESD test, electrostatic discharge test. So that's all about EMC. So I'm just going to the next topic. So the next topic in ventilator is the alarm system. So the ventilator alarms are quite complex. And the general standard is IEC 60601-1-8, which is the collateral standard applicable to all medical devices, all medical alarms. And this standard, many of the anesthesiologists or many pulmonologists or many respiratory care personnel, paramedical personnel, they have some objections to this standard. And there is a lot in literature. Some people like it or some they don't like it. So this is a typical standard. And this test has to be done in something called an ISO 3744 grade hemi-anechoic acoustics chamber. So there are 3 types of acoustics chamber. The first one is, the lowest one is something called a like general engineering grade, or the lowest one is just a shield room sort of thing. The second one is this ISO 3744 chamber. The highest grade of chamber is ISO 3745 precision grade acoustics chamber. So here again, if you get your product tested in the precision grade chamber, it's not required by the standard, but for R&D purpose, it's very highly recommended. And in all, both EMC and acoustics or safety, pre-compliance testing is highly recommended. Pre-compliance is like, instead of doing a whole battery of all the tests, you just do the selected tests where the chance of failure is high. And these pre-compliance setups most of the companies can have it in-house. And if they are large companies, it is better to have them in-house. And it will save a lot of money in the long run. So that's all. I'm finishing the electrical part. So Nikki, or sorry, I forgot your name. Is it correct, or you have anything to add here, or I just wanted to give a brief review of the test?
Yeah. So I agree completely. It's a lot of the work that we're seeing across our different facilities. I think one of the questions that comes up with a lot of these emergency use authorizations is, I'm an automotive company and I want to perform testing to get approval. What is it that I need to do? That's an interesting question, because when you look at the whole matrix of testing for these ventilators, it's pretty extensive. Yes. And a lot of companies are asking, do I have to do all that to submit and get an EUA? Or do I, what is the bare minimum for me to be able to do? Do I just run a functional test and, go with that? Do I go through the whole EMC and my sequence? Do I just do the product safety testing and so forth? I think there's a lot of questions about, what is sort of the minimum that these companies that are non-medical or even medical have to do in order to get the approvals. And there's a lot of different approaches that are being taken, which is interesting.
So for the engineers, I want to add one point is that AMI, that Association for Advancement of Medical Instrumentation, has released a guidance document related to its design. And so I have finished the electrical part. The standards which I'm not covering are usability. And this usability also, I have seen, if I remember correctly, in the UK's ventilator, MHRA's, this emergency ventilator, they have shortened the usability to about half a day in those guidelines, and that RMVS or something. So that guideline, they have shortened the usability testing for half a day. And the next standard would be packaging. Packaging is, of course, I'm leaving that. Then the final, or one of the key ones, I guess, would be that a typical ventilator, it comes with a lot of other accessories, like at least pulse oximeter is required. So the pulse oximeter has its own particular standard, and if the ventilator comes with an ECG, it has its own particular standard, and so on and so forth. And in one area, like the critical care ventilator is always complex, more complex than the transport ventilator. But in one area, an additional test is required in the transport ventilator. So which is related to automotive. So if a medical device is being used in an ambulance, you will have to test for automotive transients, which is a standard called ISO 7637-2. So that a critical care ventilator, which is used in a hospital, need not go through. So that every typical automotive manufacturer knows about that test. And that was EMC. And if you go with wireless modules, every nation has different wireless, like for example, some data transfer or so on and so forth for Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. You will have to additionally test for the wireless standards. And among the components, there are 4 major components in a ventilator, which are common in critical care ventilator. The first ones are some sort of pressure sensors, differential pressure sensors, or any pressure sensor. So these pressure sensors, their reliability is quite important. I don't know how can I relate it to standards, but they have to be highly reliable. The second part is some sort of flow sensors are there, or valves or flow sensors. They are also very critical. The third are the batteries. Any battery which is being used, that also has to be very critical. And the fourth is the display. Typically, if you go for a low-grade display, as soon as you do the electrostatic discharge test, like why do you need electrostatic discharge in the first place? So just imagine that in the hospital, there are a lot of radiated emission is generated by the electrosurgery generator. So I think you all are familiar with medical equipment. So the electrosurgery generator generates a lot of radiated emission. Similarly, if you are using a defibrillator on the patient, it is nothing but an ESD. So those are the key things. So if somewhere where the regulations are not very strict, if someone wants to come up with a ventilator, at least they should, somehow make sure that at least the device is able to withstand the charge from the defibrillator. That's a good enough answer. Now, other than so hopefully I have covered them all. And if you can just put the slide back, Joe, just I have one point to show it. Yeah.
In the meanwhile, we have an unusual phenomenon. We have 2 Nicky Malcolms now, and I don't think that they're identical twins, but
I've been exposed.
now, who's this other Nicky Malcolm? Will the real Nicky Malcolm please stand up? I can't hear you, Nicky Malcolm number 2. Here, let's see. Now I can.
There you go. I'm trying to unmute myself, but I can't. So Mache is actually our medical device expert within the company. So I forwarded him the invite this morning, not realizing that it was a personalized invite that would make him pop on as Nicky Malcolm. So lucky for him, he gets to be.
You're the real one.
I'm the real one.
Okay, so tell us about the real one.
The real one, yes. So I work for Element. I've worked for Element for about 4 years. We have our lab in Bothell, and we predominantly do aerospace, and I've been trying to diversify our lab into more med device stuff over the last year and a half or so with package testing as well as product testing, and we have the EMC lab there as well. So, but I knew that Maciej could definitely speak to the standards a little bit better than I could from a technical standpoint. So I invited him to be me for a minute.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you to the real Nikki and your interloper.
Good morning.
Venkat, we're back to the city of destiny.
Yeah, so now I think, so this is my, so I'm not a person from, sorry, it went again. Yeah, so I'm not a person from biocompatibility background, and biocompatibility talk is there, I think, scheduled later also. But just I would like to add a few points. So typically for the ventilator, or not ventilator exactly, but for all the connectors and polymer devices, PEEP valves, or all whatever you are breathing, that air, so these are called breathing gas pathways, and their biocompatibility standard, which was a standard released in 2017, is ISO 18562 series of standards, and which are related to ISO 10993 series, which is the common standard for biocompatibility. And these tests, I have found one thing in the guidance from this American Association for Advancement of Medical Instrumentation consensus report. So I recommend all engineers to read this report. This is for the emergency use ventilator design. They mentioned somehow a subclause, which kind of shocked me, is that this the chosen materials for gas pathways need to be reasonably pure and simple in nature, and just avoid this polyvinyl chloride and other compounds, oil particles, volatile organic compounds, mold release agents, and so on. And and then these series may be required or may not be required. And they have given a rationale saying that the tests of ISO 18562 series are very expensive, time consuming to perform, and require very specialized test equipment. Requiring these tests for EUV would clearly delay their availability, so on. So I am not exactly sure how this thing was written, but I would like to know someone more from some regulatory expert. So in that case, if there is a chance to skip the biocompatibility, manufacturers should use it. And this is applicable not only for ventilator, I guess it's applicable for CPAP or other devices also, but I'm not very much clear on that. And I have left one topic, which is the software. So maybe that presentation part is over. I'll just briefly finish the software part. So the software standard for software lifecycle processes is IEC 62304. I am not exactly a software guy, but I'll just speak on it. So these standards are, this is for the embedded device software. And this standard, the next version is coming up. Because this old standard was released in around 2006, and slowly it was harmonized by different countries. And this new standard will take care of cybersecurity, and it will be applicable for all health software. So, and it will take care of some legacy software also. So there is this standard basically classifies it according to the software risk class and so on, ABC and so on. So I recommend any manufacturer who is designing any device which uses a microcontroller to kindly look at the new standard also, and just to know that what is the development coming up. So the new standard is not yet released, but I think the content is 95% finalized. So I'll conclude by that. And anything I have missed, I don't know, like if I can, yeah, there is this simple, there is all these standards. Now, okay, so this is the ventilator part. Now, how to get the standards? So all the different organizations like ISO, IEC, BSI even, and different, I think for any other ASTM, all of these organizations, they are giving away the standards for free as long as they are related to COVID. So they can be freely downloaded. And so that's very good. And I have left one particular case, which is for computational modeling or computational assessing the verification, computational modeling and its related verification and validation, which is ASME 40. So I guess that a device like ventilator or a critical care ventilator should have some sort of a computational or mathematical model, especially in such a complex, with a device which affects such a complex, it's a biomechanically very complex device. So the standard to be followed is ASME VNV 40. It's not mentioned in anywhere. I have not seen anywhere in the FDA guidance documents or either the other guidance documents of other countries, but still this ASME VNV 40 is an FDA recognized consensus standard. So obviously one is expected to follow it. So I am finishing the whole thing. The first part is, I'll again start from reverse. Computation, ASME VNV 40. Then we have got the software, IEC 62304. Then the electrical safety, IEC 60601-1, which also includes electrical, mechanical, and thermal safety. Then there is the EMC standard, IEC 60601-1-2. Then if there is a wireless component involved, you have to look at the wireless standard, Bluetooth or whatever new kind of technologies like light fidelity, or I don't know what will happen with light fidelity, but these are all coming up. Then the alarms, which is very critical for a ventilator. It is IEC 60601-1-8. And this ventilator, if it is a transport ventilator or if it is used in home, there are some different requirements, or if it is used in a healthcare environment. And several of these standards are being updated. And the particular standard for a critical care ventilator is ISO 80601-2-12. The latest version, 2020 version, has just come now, and it's available for free. So, and there are a lot of other equipment which are related, like oxygen concentrators. All the same things are applicable there also to a certain degree. CPAP, BiPAP. Then there is the simple ambu bag, which is a mechanical bag, which is also very useful. And then this is the critical care ventilator and transport care ventilator. And I think there is some standard relating to this humidifiers, to how when the gas comes through water, how do you humidify the thing? So there are some other additional standard, I think -70 or -80, I think. Sorry if I'm wrong, 80601-2-80, or some support systems for ventilator. And then the gas connectors, how do you connect the ventilator? So there should be some compressed gas association, CGA or someone, they will have different countries have different agencies. It's a mechanical standard. I don't know much about it. But the main thing in the ventilator is how do you connect it with the hospital gas system and what kind of gases you're using. So there are certain standards relating to that. I'm not much aware of it. But these are all within the broad umbrella of ISO 13485 and ISO 14971. So the 13485 is the quality management standard for medical devices. Anything, anywhere in medical devices, if you are a designer, the design controls part is very important. Product realization is very important. 7.3, section 7.3, design controls. It's an absolute must for every designer who is trying to attempt designing a medical device. Then there is this, if you are a distributor, you are doing whatever with it, somewhere the ISO 13485 will affect you, and it has its corresponding CFR regulation in the US also. I forget the name, somewhere some guideline. And then ISO 14971 is the risk management standard, and which uses the techniques like or the different failure modes of a device, or how it goes. That's the standard. So this is the broad spectrum, and I think 13485 is not applicable in US, but there is some other standard or the regulations which are present. Some CFR will be there. And for wireless devices or all these EMC tests, I think maybe the US FCC requirements also will be required. Now the final point is, how do we get these devices tested, which is very crucial. So in 1 second, I will just look. So there is a site called, there is a lab in India. In India, if you want to look, the standard are controlled, or the labs are controlled by an agency called NABL, which accredits the different laboratories. In that, you can browse for different categories.
Say that slower.
Hello?
What is the website?
It's called NABL, National Board for Accreditation of Laboratories or something. So that accredits all the labs in India. It's like A2LA in US. So this American Association for Laboratory Accreditation. So accreditation, same type, it's in India. And I think similar agencies are there in all countries. And one way to test and in India, TUV Rhineland is testing a ventilator for free of cost. That is what they have put in their website. So any person who wants to test a ventilator anywhere in globe, they can contact TUV Rhineland India, if I'm not wrong, and they are going to test it for free. That's what they have said. And similar, I think these global notified bodies and testing, inspection, and certification agencies will be these TUV Rhineland, TUV Sud, TUV Nord, UL, SGS, I think many others. And these are all for electromedical, and some will do biocompatibility also. And there are some agencies especially known for biocompatibility, like NAMSA, and you have Eurofins, you have got Toxicon, and Toxicon has an excellent medical device testing guide on its website, and you just have to fill in your email, and that's very good, you know, for a non-bioengineer, that's a lot non-biologist, it's very clear. And Nelson Laboratories, so these are all agencies for biocompatibility, and there are also smaller.
If you want to share anything about what you're telling us, if you want us to see it.
I thought it will take time. So am I being too fast, or should I go slow? Or
well, I will tell you that it just an interesting little marketing factoid. In communication, they say that 7% of what is communicated are your actual words, and 93% is your tone and your manner and your gestures and everything like that. So I can comfortably tell you, A, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but B, I can see you're really excited about it and very knowledgeable, which is really what I need to understand, so that when it comes to this topic, I know I can reliably count on you, even though I don't know what you're talking about. But that's okay. I think the other people, all of whom are on the screen right now, have enough of an engineering background to know what you are saying. Do we have any, before he continues, and actually, as I look at the composition of the people on the call, most of you are able to track with them pretty well, I think. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to open all of the mics of all of the panelists and organizers. So if you have a question that you want to ask or something you'd like to add, you're welcome to do so now.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you're going to may have heard this from clients, you know, people are building a device, and let's assume that they have a good system for keeping track. All their documentation is really in place. They've got a quality system in place. They don't have any holes in all the stuff. And they say, okay, we want to go to the next step and make sure that we can go through the regulatory. And we need to budget for this because we don't have anyone in-house to do it. Like, about how many hours, if someone hands you a fairly complete set of documents, about how many hours should we budget for to hire someone like any of you to take us to the next step with the FDA, say?
So there are that cannot easily be predicted unless one actually goes through that. That's my view, actually. At least after a detailed discussion, one can have some estimate. And my main area of expertise is in the core engineering side of it, rather than the regulatory. So regulatory is kind of like legal and engineering, and I am actually into the engineering side of it. But I have associates, or maybe Michelle would be better to comment on that. But I can definitely surely say that unless and until one actually goes through, it would be very difficult to estimate it. So that's the problem. So let's say it's a small.
Is there anything you'd like to say about that, Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle might have a.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I'm getting alarms about my next meeting coming up.
Sure.
I'll answer the question, and then Michelle can maybe clarify. I'm just going to throw out budgetary numbers because you really want to quote, and the particulars of the project matter.
Yeah.
And they can make a big difference. But in general, my firm charges flat fees because we do a fairly high volume of 510K submissions. So we charge $14,000 for a pre-sub and 510K. For the testing part, that's the expensive part. It's not terribly expensive when you consider the cost of all your testing that you have to do. Regulatory consulting is a small piece of it. The most expensive part is usually your electrical safety and EMC testing. That can be $45,000 to $65,000 easily. And if you don't follow the advice of our friend Leo Eisner, you probably will redo some of that. You'll send like if you make the rookie mistake of sending off your unit to the testing house, it'll get fried during your EMC testing, and they'll send it back to you saying it failed, and you'll have to restart the testing over again with new units. Whereas if you send an engineer and spare parts along with it, if it breaks, they'll be able to continue the testing after you fix it. So those are some things that you need to know before you jump into this. But the testing is probably an order of magnitude around 100 grand, with the electrical safety and EMC testing being the most expensive. Some of your benchtop performance testing probably being close to number 2. Biocompatibility testing could easily be somewhere in the order of 20, 25,000, because the testing that's required for airways is more expensive than direct contact stuff. There are 3 different standards a lot of people don't even know about for air pathways. And then you've got usability testing. And if anybody's worked with a usability testing house, if you're not doing the testing yourself and writing your own protocols, figure on 6 figures just for the usability testing. So you definitely want to hire somebody that knows usability testing and have them on your team and have them an integral part of the development process, or you're paying through the nose for usability testing that shouldn't cost more than about 10,000. So there's a lot of ways to spend money, but just a rough order of magnitude, 100 grand is, if you don't have at least that much, don't even bother. You're wasting your time.
Leo would be a great addition to Premium.
Yeah.
He can encourage him to join us.
He would, and I know that he actually is a convener on the standards for the respirator, and he directly consults with the FDA on the respirator guidelines and ventilators. So he knows this particular topic better than anybody. And he was the one that told me a couple weeks ago that the FDA is thinking about removing the EUA for the ventilators because they're not sure that they need it anymore.
So Michelle, do you kind of concur with Bob Robert's estimates?
Let me evict you, Nikki, and get Michelle's visage on here. Michelle?
Where did she said she had another meeting? Maybe she.
No, I know she's here.
Oh,
So I only have a few more minutes, but I concur with Rob, and I think that is the biggest underestimate of the people who are working on all the open sourced platforms or trying to create an open source platform. It is many of them that I've interacted with, they don't understand 60601. They don't understand the laundry list of standard that's listed in the EUA. So I don't know if you don't even know basic what 60601 is, much less the basic, requirements in it. How are you going to design a device that can reasonably be said that you can make a declaration of conformity to that standard under the EUA? And so the overall cost, the technical requirements, I think are just really, really underestimated. And it's not a free-for-all with the EUAs like masks seem to be right now. The FDA is taking a lot more diligence, a lot more time to review them. They're much more technical submissions. So yeah, I think people are trying to be hopeful, but ultimately you're gonna take up resources for from real companies that have got capacity and technical know-how to make these products.
Yeah. So
I just want to add one point again, that pre-compliance testing can really reduce the cost of the final testing. So I recommend pre-compliance testing, and it's not very expensive to set up for any typical company to have an in-house pre-compliance testing facility.
Was my assertion earlier in the call that anyone who has a good heart and really wants to help with ventilators is engaging in great folly and ultimately will waste time and resources and not help?
Well, I think they need to pivot. And to Mark's point earlier, that you need to think about what are the technologies that are going to prevent people from needing to be on ventilators, or some sort of ventilator alternative. The EUA I'm working on underneath the ventilator group is for a low positive pressure breathing assist device that operates on Heliox, which is a helium oxygen mixture that's already kind of used in some ventilators, but it like super concentrates the oxygen through this particular combination of technologies that my client put together. So I think, and it's supposed to be, hopefully you can use it before it gets to the point that you need a ventilator. So I think that those are the things that people really need to be focusing on.
I think you're spot on there. I think anybody that combines technology with an oxygen generator, so then you don't have to have oxygen tanks, which is one of the hazards that are associated with ventilators, is another thing. And availability of just having enough wall connections for oxygen is a problem at hospitals. And if you go mobile outside the hospital in a triage tent, you're certainly not going to have it. And then one other thing to think about in terms of where this falls in the spectrum of strategies, look at how many decades the world spent on trying to come up with an artificial heart. And I was the auditor for Abiacor, and they, you know, they really worked hard to try to come up with a replacement for the heart. But in the end, a heart assist device is what won. And so that's exactly the direction we ought to be thinking in terms of patients that are really sick from this virus. You need something to assist them in breathing, not breathe for them.
Well put. And just a trivial thing, you probably, maybe you already know this, but 100% oxygen, you can burn someone with that. You can hurt them. So you want enough oxygen, but not too much oxygen. So you usually turn down the FiO2. Once you get someone back up where you want them to be, you turn it way down. Anyway, little physiology trivia.
I'd just like to say that there's a fellow on our call today. His name is Sandhya, is my best guess, and he's out of India. And we were just talking back and forth, and I asked if we were connected, he and I. He said no. He got information about today's webinar from the CEO of IITPL in Bangalore. And he's in the process of testing ventilators and wanted more information on testing. That he's not yet met Venkat, and that this was a very helpful webinar, and that makes Joey happy. So I'm searching for your LinkedIn link, Venkat, and I'll send it to Sandhya so that you guys can continue this conversation afterward.
I have a couple other thoughts because I'm working with a ventilator company that's been on the market for a while, and they're making some upgrades to their product. And one of the things that happened immediately as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic is the supply chain stalled. So they can't get components that are crucial components to their device.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the biggest problems for the industry as a whole, not just in ventilators, but in everything. Your supply chain is disrupted. And so one of the things that should be looked at very carefully right from the start is, what does your supply chain look like on these components? Because you want to help the industry, think of ways you can help their supply chain for existing products that are already out there. It's very easy for a company that's already on the market to swap out a pump and file their own EUA, and the FDA is going to be very supportive of that because they know what they're doing and they just need a new supplier of pumps. Or maybe it's some sensor that they need. You give them a sensor that meets the same performance specs or close, they can adjust with their software, they know how to incorporate it, they know how to validate it. So that's a way that you could help another company. And if you're very financially minded, you can make some money too. But they've had their supply chains dry up and be interrupted, and they need solutions. But if you're going to develop something yourself from scratch, think very carefully about your supply chain and make sure that you're thinking about redundant sources. Make sure that when you set specs, you're not going to have to redo all your testing because you switched a component.
I got to say goodbye. I got another meeting. Sorry.
Okay, Mark.
Bye, Tom. See you soon.
In the
We've got
soapbox
two
time.
highly coveted spots for people to add themselves on video if you'd like. You're welcome
I'm gonna have to jump off too. Thank you so much, Joe,
to
for
do that.
letting me and my interloper join.
Other
I'll replace
doppelganger. Actually, I tried to evict you before and I got rid of the wrong Nikki, so that's the hazard, people.
Did you? Thanks.
Let's get Larry Stevens back and let's see. Eddie, you had a comment before, and Jose, you had a comment before. It looks like Jose is gone, but Eddie's still here. And where would
I
you
have
like
a
to?
question that's unrelated if people are interested.
Of course, go ahead.
Anybody have experience recently with doing some remote auditing that they'd like to share? I ask because I'm doing a remote audit next week, and we don't do a lot of remote audits, so I'm looking for feedback. We're also in the process of writing a book on remote audits.
Okay.
Well, it looks like we have no takers today, but.
So how do you do it? You do it online or like?
Yes. One of the key things that they emphasize when they talk about remote audits, and this is from the perspective of a notified body that does remote audits, it's not an audit if you're just reviewing documents. That's a desktop review and shouldn't be confused with an audit.
Because they have to go and look at it.
No, that's not the difference. They used to do desktop audits instead of a stage 1 audit for certification. Now they call them stage 1 audits because the requirement is you have to actually speak with the person that is the process owner and ask them questions in an interactive review. You ask open-ended questions, not just read their procedures. If you're just reading procedures, it's a desktop review of the documentation, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's a necessary part of preparing for certification, but it's not an audit. An audit, you're both looking at documents, records, and interviewing a process owner and asking open-ended questions, and how they answer it tells you a lot about whether they're prepared for the stage 2 audit. So most of the notified bodies have been doing stage 1 audits remotely, and now there's some guidance out there on how to do it. But yes, it's usually video, but it could be teleconference. It doesn't have to be video. And the one area they're a little bit shy of is going out on the production floor and trying to do an audit of the production floor remotely, because that requires somebody walk around with a camera, a phone, a selfie stick, something like that. And it's just way too easy for the auditee to not point the camera in the direction they don't want to point it. And so they're very worried about fraud when it's a certification body. As an internal auditor, you're only hurting yourself if you don't show me an area that needs help. But the certification bodies, they're saying production areas where if we didn't audit it last time and it's due for auditing, we're going to have to do an on-site follow-up, so we can do a partial audit, but we'll have to do the follow-up. So they're developing some very hard, fast rules, and I'm trying to get some responses from people that have been through these to see if there are differences. And I'm going to be talking with each of the certification bodies and see if they have any differences internally in policies.
I'll see if I can't take this little snippet and share it on LinkedIn and tag you and see who we can come up with. Venkat, I'd like to ask, in the beginning of the call, you said that you are looking to go out on your own as an independent consultant.
Yeah, exactly. Yesterday yesterday was my last day in my previous company, and now I think for some time I'll either go on as an independent consultant or help, like Robert told, try to help some manufacturer making some devices for the immediate COVID part.
That choice now.
What did you say?
Why are you making that choice now? I'm thinking as
because I had
5 out of 6 of us on the call right now are independent consultants, and I think we can, 4 out of 6 of us are. And it's tough when you first get started. Do you have a backlog of people that want to hire you right away, or are you really starting with nothing?
I'm starting with some technical potential clients, but my goal was typically in India, the medical device regulations are very new, and the landscape is changing very fast. And before 2017, there was very few regulations, only related mainly to the radiation safety part of X-rays and so on. And now the regulator, the national regulator, the drug regulator has taken over medical device regulations, and the landscape is changing. So that was one area. And second area was like, so just for a change, or maybe I will join a company in future, but that's what I thought. But any advice is welcome. But one thing I would like to point out, for most of the startups, in my previous work, I was also associated with an incubator. So a lot of startups, they had no idea about these standards and regulations. And it really becomes difficult, because at least even for a startup, if some big company has to take you, to buy your product or buy your company, you need to know the regulatory strategy and even the testing strategy from the day one. So every product has to have these features, like, like just like design for manufacturing, you need to have design for compliance from day one. Then your product will be successful. And before making a ventilator, I would like, or a complex device, I would say a company should make a smaller device, let's say like an oxygen concentrator, which is a large market, or a CPAP machine, and then slowly evolve into complex products. That's my view, but that's the view. That's why I was getting into it. But if anyone really, Joe or Robert, if you have any other work or anything, I'm free to help. And my main target for the next 2-3 months is COVID-related projects. So I'll tell you, like, I know nothing about the ASTM standards for testing PPE, but I am ready to work in that area also, because I thought at least if somebody is making a mask, then let's learn and let's try to figure out what's there.
I've shared your LinkedIn URL to for everyone on the call. And I will just quickly show my screen and let everyone see what the next couple of weeks are. A week from today, Josue is going to talk about market access in Mexico. Jonathan's going to talk about business development. Arthur about biocompatibility. Joe Byrne has a new EQMS system. Our Larry is going to talk about the mindset of an FDA employee. Tell us about that a little bit. Having been an FDA employee, what's going on in your head? We cannot hear you. You are self-muted, Larry.
Okay, all right. I'm on now. Okay, I worked for FDA for 10 years right out of school, and I didn't really know much about anything. But then I went into private industry, and I spent 18 years in the medical device industry and was a senior level executive and had a lot of management experience. And I went back to FDA in 2000, and I was looking at them through different eyes, having spent 18 years in the industry, and it set me back in the sense of seeing some rather odd management styles and seeing some people that had some interesting mindsets and that. And I spent 11 years and I saw all of these guys. So this is an attempt at me to help people understand that FDA people who work for FDA all their life they're a little different. That you can't really use your business experience to try and figure out what they're going to do, but you can figure it out if you know who you're dealing with. That's
going to be really interesting. That is, ladies and gentlemen, happening on June 5, and then on the 12th, Nick and Michelle are going to team up and talk about two great tastes that taste great together: reimbursement and regulatory, which often have the same objective but different ways of achieving it. So that is what's up on our docket. We're at an hour 8. Venkat, do you have some closing thoughts? And Robert apparently does as well, but Venkat?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think it was a nice experience. And the one closing thought would be like as I said, at least if a company really has, instead of after designing the product, getting it, worrying about the testing from day one, if they are really prepared, they will be much more successful. That's all.
Okay.
My advice to you is that I would think about what narrow niche you really would like to work in, because it makes it so much easier for you to market yourself and for other people to refer business to you. For instance, Leo Eisner, he's the 6601 guy, not just in his neck of the woods, but the whole entire world. There's nobody that knows more about that silly standard than anybody else in the entire world.
There's one more person. No, there is one more person. There are two people. First is Leo. Another one is a guy called Brian Barsich. You know me, maybe?
No, I don't know his name, which tells you something about marketing.
Okay. No, he
Damn it.
has a company called Meka Associates. I had done his course. He had come down to UL India a few years back, maybe, and I had done his course, and I learned 60601 from him. I have also taken his online course, and that company is MECA Associates. So Meka Associates, and it's an integrated lab also. So he's a lab. Yeah, that's the lab, and I think these are the two people basically. Correct.
There's another one that's in the same level. He's in Japan, and he's set up almost as many labs as Leo has. But these are people that write the standard for all of us and have run labs and audited, and they've been doing it for decades. So you decide what you want to do for the next several decades. Think 30 years ahead and niche down to that, and it'll make your life easier as a consultant. And don't be afraid to say, I don't do that. But here's who you can call if you want help with that.
Well, with the exception of fake Nikki, everyone here is available on MDG Premium, and I think I speak for everyone on the call. You can ping any of us and collaborate, ask for counsel, and the like.
Joe, can you add me on for July 17th?
No, but I can do June 9th. Oh, this July 17th. Okay, what happens on July 17th?
It's just I'm working on a campaign and the timing's about right. I think June will be too soon.
Okay, can you give us a
the topic is remote auditing, and we should be in the final draft of our book by then.
Okay, well, along those lines, anyone else who's on the call or watching this later who wants to teach us something, even if it goes way the hell over Joe Hage's head, I am game. As long as it educates our broader medical device community, that's what this is for. And I really, it's funny, I kind of imagined this back in September, October, but boy, do I feel prescient now having this Slack channel and these calls, because we're all home. And I look forward to these calls, and with the exception of Venkat, I learn from them, except that I've learned that he's a good guy to know and that he knows what he's talking about. But in general, it keeps us connected, and I'm convinced that it will help folks be more productive, faster, better, cheaper than they could on their own. So for Joe Hage and his family, Elliot sleeping on the yellow chair, signing off for this week. Find me online, and thanks everybody. Venkat, special thanks for your presentation today.
Bye.
Have a good week, everyone. Bye for now.